So good morning, it's Christopher Forster here again, and it's Easter weekend, and I'm here in a field full of new life. Just turn this around, let's have a look. Okay, see all of this going on. Hey Banjo, what's going on? What's going on? What's happening? Oh, he's found a stick. That's hardly a surprise. Okay. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, let's okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to walk somewhere else and perhaps he'll stop barking. Good, just had to find a space where we could calm Banjo down a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to say, wish you a happy Resurrection Day. Happy Resurrection Day. So I wanted a little bit of peace and quiet when I'm working with the dogs, because today is amazing. The cross and the creation day, they're the two most amazing days in all of the universe's history. We often feel that's just hyperbole, you know. Obviously you wouldn't say that if I said to you, you go, yes, I believe that, but we don't really get our heads around how big the crucifixion weekend is. The cross of Jesus is. The way I sometimes describe it is it's an eternal event that happens in history. Just as creation was an eternal event that happens in history. It's an eternal event that leaves its mark through this flow of time and story in which God creates mankind. And sadly, we so often, we've kind of reduced it to a simple transaction. And it's not that the transaction is not true. So we get into huge, massive arguments and we excommunicate people and we won't talk to them because one person says he doesn't think the cross is about one thing and another says it is. And I'm not going to name the names. You can all choose your options. And yet, I see the cross as being right at the heart of those statements that when Paul says in Ephesians that everything is being summed up into the headship of Jesus, and that the life that we know of Jesus, and we've not told every single instant and minute and moment of it, we're told the key stories, but it all makes sense when you come to the cross. And the life of Jesus and his story is a story which my life revolves around, and so my life ultimately makes sense when it comes to the cross at the centre. But there's more to it than that. Because actually, as an eternal event, the cross has been true from eternity. So he has been the lamb slain since the foundation of the earth. So when Abraham has dealt with God in umpteen different ways, one day he's walking with his son who God has told him to sacrifice, and he looks up and Isaac says, we've got the wood and we've got the what's he say? You've got the knife, got the wood. Where's the sacrifice? And he says, and he saw off in a far place and says, God himself will provide a sacrifice. And here's the thing, so Abraham didn't know the name of Jesus. He didn't know that he suffered under Pontius Pilate, was born of a Virgin Mary. But at that moment, it was accredited to him as righteousness. That tiny sliver that it was of what the cross was about, he responded to, and his salvation is by faith in that event. And actually, that's a great example of the way the cross works in all of our lives, is we don't fully understand it. It is an event without parallel. It is, as I said, one of just two eternal events, well, maybe more, but eternal events that happen in our history. Not that somehow it's an eternal event that's represented in our history, but somehow it actually happens in our history. And so when I come to it, I can only, doesn't matter how big my brain is or how long I spend looking at it and trying to understand it, I will find deeper and deeper layers, because somehow it connects to absolutely everything. Everything, certainly, that will eternally be eternal, if that makes sense. So if you kind of come into the modern world, well, if you think about, just recently there was a little video clip that went round where it shows a Christian Orthodox artist in conversation with Jordan Peterson, the psychologist that's become sort of the scourge of the sort of politically correct moralistic agenda. And he kind of suddenly bursts into tears and says, I think I do believe it. Now, he doesn't believe it like some evangelical Christians believe it. Let's be sure of that. Let's be clear of that. But he's talking, if you take the context, he said, I'm left with two miracles, one of which I've got to accept. Either that miraculously Jesus lived a life that somehow has been told in a way that mythologically connects to absolutely every level of human experience. So he's talking as a kind of Jungian psychologist all about myth and all of those sorts of things. Either that happened by accident or it was intentional. And I think it was. I think it was intentional. And so here's a way of believing. It may not be my way of believing, but somehow even his understanding of the world is being drawn together. In that very interview, he makes reference to a statement by C.S. Lewis, who often describes his conversion as how he suddenly realised that it was a myth that really happened. That's fundamentally what he's drawing on. And that truth was picked up actually by another, it's by a sociologist, a historical sociologist. So what does that mean? Well, I love that, the way he describes it at the very end of one of his books, which is actually about the church, where he's talking about bringing the disciplines of sociology to history. And he kind of finishes with this line, talking about people whose opinions about the Christian faith, it's actually about the Christian faith, their opinions. He says, when it comes to those opinions, he says, those that won't count shouldn't count. That's the final line of his book. And what he means by that is he's gone and he's actually counted where Christianity grows and how it grows, and in the pagan relationships as well. And in that context, again, the thing that kind of really comes through is that somehow the message of Jesus fulfilled both a thread of Judaism, but also a thread of paganism. You say, oh no, we don't like that. That sounds like we're going synchronistic. But he shows it unequivocally. He shows how actually the gospel prospered in places where the cult of where the cult of Isis has grown up. And he describes the cult of Isis as being the most developed form of paganism. So about 300 years before Jesus comes along, the cult of Isis grows up, and in a pagan world, Isis is the supreme god. But he said it never quite crossed over. But when the gospel comes along, it made sense of that, and that's one of two factors: a large Hellenistic Jewish population, and the cult of Isis. And in the towns where the gospel grows in the first century, creates that strong base. Those two things are present. And you see, there are pagan elements that Jesus fulfills, and we don't like to hear about that. But it's true, being washed in the blood of the lamb, or being washed in the blood of the bull, well, that's another of these kind of developed pagan religions. Those kind of phrases we find in the ancient world. But somehow, the cross of Jesus starts drawing them together. And for me, one of the seminal stories of Christianity was captured in the kind of ways of narratively looking at it, was captured in the book by Don Richardson, the missionary, who, in his book, Eternity in Their Hearts, kind of draw out really strongly how it was that where the gospel connects with elements of the pagan religion and shows itself to be the fulfillment of those things, there was a great kind of receptiveness to the cross. And his basic final conclusion of that book is there are probably those things everywhere, and as missionaries we should be looking for them. See, the cross sums it all up. So the cross is an eternal event that happens in history. It's an eternal event that happens in history. And there is more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy. There is more in the cross than my head has ever got itself around. And so there is a degree to which I submit to the mystery, but it's a mystery that is infinitely explorable by reason. And I could do a whole kind of little crumbs under the table now on different ways Christians have seen the cross. They've seen it in God taking a responsibility for the world with suffering by actually suffering with it, alongside it. They've seen it in terms of payments made to the devil. They've seen it in terms of things that satisfy the honour of God. They've seen it in lots of different ways, and there are probably 1,000 more. And somehow the cross would be more than the sum of all of those things, and probably things that none of them have totally ever encountered. So let's just finish today that kind of final thought and idea, so I'll say it again. The cross is an eternal event that happens in history. As I come to terms with it, Lord Jesus, I want to kind of feel the moment because I can't explain it. Help me feel the moment and the truth and the new life that is anticipated, the new life. And because perhaps I should finish with what I often say is one of my favourite quotes. The favourite quotes outside the Bible is that one by C.S. Lewis. It's not so much that I saw the light and found Jesus, but I found that Jesus is the light by which I best see everything else. He becomes the thing that sums it all up, and at the heart of that experience, the thing that sums up his life is the cross and the resurrection. And the thing that sums up my life as I deal with his life and his teaching is right at the heart of it is the cross and the resurrection. And the things that those around it who are exploring everything they can without God, and as they look at the things that ultimately value, we find that they are all summed up in the cross and the resurrection. So those are my thoughts this morning. Let's just turn the camera around, see if I can do that. This is where we're heading into. This is where we're going to head into. So until next time, it's been really good to be with you. I've been Christian Forster. These have been my dogs. And this has been Crumbs Under the Table. Goodbye.